Enough with embrace debate. Pointless yelling at each other on ESPN and Fox, yet very little actual content. It's time for a change. A voice from the fan, for the fan. The most compelling topics in sports, all covered here. This is Corbet's Corner.
All right, welcome in. Check out Corbet. Doug Cicerelli back with us. I believe we made it to day 4, which is the longest we've had here on this second jackpot. So he's looking to go on another run, hopefully cash that jackpot for a lucky listener. So we approach $100. So check that out. That dropped today. This is Corbet's Corner. I'm Dylan Corbett, Matt Cruzen. We got a lot to talk about here. We're going to first begin with college football because I want to touch on one bowl game I'm keeping an eye on. And then, of course, the college football playoff, New Year's Day. We got to get the official analysis for Notre Dame, Bama, and maybe a play or two from both of us here. So first I want to talk about, though, Georgia and Cincinnati. Are we going to have an undefeated team? Is this going to be the UCF of, a couple of years ago with Scott Frost? This line is, I've hated Georgia all year, but they have been solid the last 2 games against Mizzou and South Carolina. Take it as you will. But Cincinnati, a team you've been high on, of course, the record speaks for itself. You can only do with what's and who is on the schedule. How do you see this game? The line is at 7. I don't really have a lean, so to speak, so far, but you always like to see a good story like Cincinnati against one of the big boys.
Yeah. While I'm kind of talking here, I'm going to look to just check the list of there's a running list of guys who are not playing in bowl games,
right?
For one reason or another. No, on the surface, I like Cincinnati. I mean, well, for one, I didn't have a very good year betting college football, period. But I feel like the couple times I bet against Georgia, I know I hit Florida against them, and then pretty sure I wasn't on the Alabama game. But then, I hit Cincinnati for 3 or 4 times. I think they didn't cover once, maybe, when I hit them. So, that's the game that gets us started off. Obviously, Notre Dame later on, and then Clemson, Ohio State. But yeah, no, Georgia's basically, from what I've seen or what I've known, JT Daniels has been playing a lot better. And I don't think he was the quarterback all year. I think I've seen someone or people say if they went to him earlier in the year, I don't know if he played against Bama, but that might have been one. Hey, maybe they would have won that game. So they're playing well. I don't really have a lean on it either. I'll have to look a little further.
Yeah, one of those lines that is just kind of bland. You could scream it for a push. You said it, the quarterback carousel that they've had, because Jamie Newman was that Wake Forest guy that went there, and then he didn't really pan out. So, yeah, it's just been an open door there at the quarterback position. Okay, here's what we came for. Notre Dame, Bama. What's the analysis? You've enjoyed a great season. You beat Clemson without Lawrence. You lost in the ACC title game, but you're in the playoff, a chance to silence the doubters against the top team. For what it's worth, I don't think they stand a chance at winning Notre Dame. I don't think it's going to be close, but the number is too large to where I don't have a side so far, because I could totally see my initial lean is actually Notre Dame plus the points. So it's at 19.5, 20, depending on if you shop around. Bama's got, 3 legitimate Heisman contenders. Ian Book, one of the better quarterbacks in college football, in terms of longevity, career success. All right, what are you feeling? Are you jacked up? Are you kind of, you've got obviously the beatdown of earlier in the decade in the back of your head. You're hoping not to repeat on that.
Yeah, trying to keep emotions in check, I guess you could say. All right, we know what Bama is. They are the best offense in college football, or at least they have been. You put them right up there with Clemson. They have either the top 2 or 2 of the top 3 Heisman vote getters. This caught my attention today. I looked at the odds. Devontae Smith minus 350. I love the fact that he is obviously the favorite to win it now. I think he should be. You just don't see a receiver out there often. I think it's because he won the AP Player of the Year in the last handful of years. So if he wins the Heisman.
No, but real quick, Trask was like the favorite all season long, and the numbers are there, but then you lose all those big games, right? And then God,
But then it was Mac Jones.
But they're splitting votes from each other, Jones and Smith. So that's what's tough, but it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be Smith.
Okay, I do too. I think it's him and Jones 1-2. Now, while their offense is explosive, SEC doesn't have a ton of great defenses. They actually have quite a few that aren't very good at all. And I swear, every time I watched a highlight or had a Bama game on, Devontae Smith is just beating single coverage off the line, blowing right by him. I'm not seeing him beat double teams. I'm not seeing him go deep when they have safety help. Why defenses refuse to put safety help over the top every single time or double or do something, I don't know. Will Notre Dame do it? That's the question. I'll be very upset if I just see him beating them deep on one-on-one coverage or
A
plays
go
like
route.
that. Like, it'll
Yeah.
drive me nuts. So that's the thing. One thing I like is the fact that Mac Jones is not mobile at all. Trevor Lawrence, very good runner, and that was a dynamic of the offense for Clemson that Notre Dame could not stop. They could not stop him. They didn't tackle well, and then they got beat deep a couple times. They just played poorly all around. So they can keep Mac Jones in the pocket. He's not going to look to leave the pocket. If they get pressure, can make it interesting. I don't know. Will they struggle to tackle Najee Harris? Probably. They looked really bad against Mark Ingram and whoever Derrick Henry in 2012. And then on offense, the Notre Dame receivers did not get open at all against Clemson. Ian Book would get a few seconds in the pocket. No one's open. Then he's running for his life. Do they get open against Alabama? Do they seriously mix up the playbook? Screens, quick passes, get the guys with speed, the ball in space. That includes the backup running back, Chris Tyree, a true freshman. He scored the only touchdown against Clemson. Couple different receivers. They have a big freshman tight end who's a mini Gronk. He'll be a first-round pick in a few years. He can be a matchup problem for anyone. He was getting going against Clemson in the first quarter when Notre Dame was still competing in that game.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. It is a lot of points, but you're going to need a few things to go your way. Another tip ball, interception, fumble. You don't turn the ball over, stuff like that, because they're going to have a tough time stopping Bama.
I was going to say, like, I think in order to topple Bama, you're going to have to score with them, and that might just be too hard. But it is going to be a great matchup. Again, that line is just a little too astronomical for me. So let's get to the closer game, the 2-3 matchup, Ohio State, Clemson. The initial reaction was just Clemson, Clemson, Clemson. Then I started looking a little bit deeper, and for some reason, Football Power Index, take it as you will, has Ohio State as the better team than Clemson, like straight up, which shocked me. Ohio State, I wasn't high. Look at their opponents, right? Indiana, Northwestern, Clemson. I haven't been too high on them as either, but look what they've done since Lawrence came back, right? And I think they returned a lot of their guys on defense. Travis Etienne, talk about a quiet year for a guy that came in with all the Heisman buzz. I guess he's still putting up great numbers. I like Clemson here, but 7 in the hook is what drew me over to Ohio State. I think we're going to get Bama, Clemson, but Ohio State, remember, was a play away from taking down Clemson last year when the receiver broke off his route and Fields threw that interception. They were marching right down the field. God, I lost so much money on Ohio State live that day. But I think Ohio State's going to keep this close. I'm playing the number here, 7.5. How do you see this one?
Yes, so I'm with you. I think I love Clemson here, but is it recency bias? Because like you said, what is my most recent memory of each team? It's Clemson beating the shit out of Notre Dame in the ACC championship, and it's Ohio State struggling to get past Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
That's my most recent thought of them. And when you think of that, Clemson's going to roll here. But yes, it's still a very similar Ohio State team that could have, should have, almost did beat Clemson last year in the playoff. 2016, Ohio State lost 31-0 to Clemson. So they have that. Obviously, they played a few times. And then before that, 2014, they lost to Clemson. That might have been the championship. I don't really remember. Anyway, so we'll see. Right now, though, Ohio State has not impressed me at all, and that's all
No.
season, not just in the Big Ten championship. That's all season. Clemson looked so much better on defense, so that's one thing they didn't look good on most of the year was defensively. They had 3 or 4 main guys out, including Skowski, the signal caller, on defense. So yes, I still think I do like Clemson here. Fields does not look good. He looked better last year, frankly, and Lawrence looked unstoppable against Notre Dame. So I think Clemson's healthy. I hate Dabo Sweeney, even though when we talk often, but I think it's Clemson big here.
Okay. Yeah. We're thinking the same here. Clemson, Bama. I think it's going to be kind of the same case as last year where the top team's going to roll in the title game, right? It was LSU all the way too against Clemson. But then there's also the kind of farewell for Trevor Lawrence, one of the greater quarterbacks we've seen in college football. Is he going to get another title to cement that legacy? We shall see. We'll be watching together. Maybe we'll put some content. Hope everyone has a good New Year's. All right, let's get to college hoops. So let's start with this. Illinois and Minnesota. Illinois, of course, the 3 losses, a tough. They've been playing the best of the best. Baylor, one of those losses. Do we owe Minnesota a little bit more credit? I know I certainly do. That was the other team I wanted to talk about. Couple of back-to-back wins here that can't be ignored.
No, absolutely not. So, as we know, Minnesota entered a gauntlet just to start the Big Ten play. And that's not to say, like, you can look at every single Big Ten schedule, and that's what they're all going to look like. They're all going to have 6 straight ranked opponents. That's what happens when 75% of your conference is ranked. Anyway, so they enter this gauntlet, and they don't start well. They get just pummeled by Illinois.
Yep.
Then they bounce back with a really nice win over a very good SLU team. Then they beat Iowa in overtime. I bet against them both of those games. I'm like, all right, 3 times in a row. Do I take Michigan State? I did not. Thank God I did not. Minnesota rolls by 30, almost. Yeah, 25. Okay. They are playing really well. Before the season started, or the Big Ten conference started, I was telling Ty, Al, and Bryce, you know what you're going to get for the most part from Marcus Carr, Liam Robbins, and Booth Gotch. They're consistent in what they do. Marcus Carr is actually top 5 in the country in scoring right now, still averaging 6 assists. Liam Robbins is a big one who I've been high on. I knew his game would translate to the Big Ten. Others did not to name names, but the last 2 games, 18 and 10 for him. And then Booth Gotch, who probably played the worst game of his career against Illinois. That's probably why they're so bad. If they shoot well with the guys like Gabe Kalsher and Brandon Johnson, who Brandon Johnson was like 7 of 8 against Iowa from 3, guys like that, then they can be dangerous. But yeah, right now Marcus Carr is playing at a first-team All-American level. Liam Robbins is 7'1" and just causing havoc down low. He held his own against Garza. Garza had 5 points in the first half against them. So yeah, they're playing a good brand right now. You got to give Richard Pitino credit.
Yeah, so they're towards the top of the table here, 2-1 the Big Ten, but certainly some eye-opening wins. Illinois 3-1. They lost to Rutgers, who continues to surprise people. Right, they were missing one of their best players last night, and they still beat Purdue. So that's pretty solid. Speaking of Purdue, that's Illinois' next matchup at 1-2, January 2nd. But Illinois towards the top of the table, and Northwestern's up there. Michigan, how are you seeing the Big Ten so far?
Yeah, and Rutgers is very good. Like I said, that's twice in the last week now where I took a team and 30 minutes before game time, they announced that a top 2 player on their team is out. So, but both times they still covered. So that shows you, and Harper's not the only rotation guy they've lost. They've lost like 6 guys for one reason or another, and they're still winning games. Northwestern has been very pleasant surprise. They're an experienced team. Like guys like Miller Kopp and Boo Buie are playing very well. You got this Wisconsin team whose average age of their starting lineup is older than the Chicago Bulls. I keep hearing that stat this week. They play Minnesota tomorrow, so that'll be a good game. Yeah, Illinois, they bounced back well from losing to Rutgers.
Right.
They looked absolutely horrific in the first half against Penn State defensively, but they went on to win that game by 18 points. Then they battled it out with Indiana. They have Purdue next. Yeah, every game's going to be tough. Right now you have Michigan's the only undefeated team. They're 2-0 in the conference.
Right.
Everyone else has at least one loss. Iowa.
What's going on with Michigan State? 0-3
Oh,
off
and
the bat.
3. Yeah, you had them win the conference. That's
Come
just
back maybe.
tough to. Yeah, maybe, but I mean that's tough to recover from.
That
At
was
the same
shocking
time,
to me. Yeah.
yeah, no, the huge loss to Minnesota is what shocked me. I had Wisconsin beating them on Christmas Day, but I don't know where this route by Minnesota came from. They need to
Yeah.
look in the mirror and figure out what's going on. Especially, I mean, they didn't lose in non-conference, and you start with 3 straight. That's tough. You got Penn State and Indiana tonight. Both of those teams, one of them will get their first win. The other's going to be 0-3. So, how about Maryland? That's a team I am not high on at all. But then they go into Kohl Center and beat Wisconsin by fairly convincingly. That didn't make any sense. So.
Yeah, it's in its infancy, but college hoops getting into conference play, so it's fun to take a look at that. I believe the Big Ten's been one of the deepest so far. Just guys that are getting teams are getting 3 games in. I know the SEC just kind of starting off their schedule. All right, before we wrap up college basketball, I got to get your input here. I got suckered into it again. NC State, Boston College. Come on, +8.5. What are we doing here? What's the read?
I lean NC State here.
Huh?
I looked a little bit at this. Boston College is
Terrible.
They're terrible defensively. They're only shooting 30% from 3, turning it over. Not a good rebounding team. I think NC State does some of those things well. But I mean, my lean the other day that I didn't take was way off. Yeah, NC State shoots 39% from 3. That's a big difference. Rebounds are similar. Maybe they keep it close, but I think NC State wins for sure. I just NC State hasn't played anyone either, so maybe
True.
their stats
So they're coming off the win over North Carolina, which I leaned and
other
didn't.
than that, but I'm still not that high on North Carolina either.
True, but maybe, and again, so NC State hasn't played anyone. Here's my rationale, and yes, I took it. I also took the over because BC absolutely sucks. You mentioned it; their defense is terrible. It's at 152.5. It's the non-public side. I took it. BC +8.5. So it opened at 10 and it went down. I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh my God, this, where are sharps going to look at this? And then it went, towards BC. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, wait, you guys are getting fooled into this. I did a little digging and I found my own stat. BC, they just couldn't even cover against Maine, but they're coming off the win. NC State against the quote unquote good win against North Carolina, potentially a letdown after a rivalry game, right? BC, when they have been a dog by 7 or more points, it's happened 3 times. They've covered all 3. It was Villanova to open up the season. I already forgot. It was Minnesota. I mean, remember, they took Minnesota. They should have beat Minnesota. Remember that game? That was crazy. It went to OT.
Yeah, I had that game when they were down 15.
Yeah, so that's my reasoning for BC. I just had to get your
read. No, it could. I'm like I said, leans are leans for a reason. I don't feel confident enough to take it. So,
okay, 2 last topics I want to get by your input on because they run through your teams. One is Chicago Bears. What do we have to do? This week it's the Packers. It's got to be a win, or is there a possible different scenario there? I believe that line's at 5.5. Packers still fighting for the top seed in the NFC.
Yeah, no, there's multiple ways in, win and in, obviously, but then also if the Cardinals lose, then the Bears are in by virtue of the tiebreaker.
And Kyler Murray is starting, I saw.
Is he? I was looking, and Jared Goff is not. So you're most like, okay, yeah.
Isn't it Bortles? Oh my God.
No, they did sign him for insurance. It's like John Wofford or something like that from Wake Forest, or I think he's a rookie, maybe undrafted. Fuck, I don't know. Yeah, you're gonna have to beat the Packers. They're gonna be playing everyone. So you're gonna have to earn your way in. I don't hate that. The fact that if you don't beat them and assume the Rams lose, then you don't deserve to be in because you wouldn't do anything anyway. Here's this: the Rams are not guaranteed to make it. If the Bears and the Cardinals win, Rams are out, and the Bears would get the 6th seed. If the Rams and the Bears and the Cardinals win, that means the Packers have lost. And then if Seattle and New Orleans both win, they're all tied at 12-4. Then it would be New Orleans 1, Packers 3, Seattle 2. So the Bears would be playing the Packers in the 6-2 the following week if somehow
Oh,
that happened.
jeez.
It's not out of the realm of possibilities. It would require the Bears to beat the Packers. So unlikely, because the Packers are playing at an elite level, and Aaron Rodgers is going to be the MVP. I heard your Corbets the other day. He is the favorite now. It's not even Mahomes. I haven't looked at the odds, but I
No,
can tell you it's Aaron Rodgers is the MVP right now.
I was
So
gonna say my worst nightmare came true. It was on the ticker yesterday. He's like DraftKings has him as the odds-on favorite -330, and it's like, he's there. The yards aren't there, and Mahomes is not going to play. That's what screwed him. Is Mahomes is not going to play this weekend? I don't think. And because they've already locked up the number 1 seed, why would he play? And Rodgers obviously going to play. Geez, yeah, that pissed me off, but he deserves it. It would be 3 times. I agree with you. I think that's the lock.
he locked it up on Sunday when he went, I think 3 or 4 touchdowns.
But Adams helped him. Is it?
Dude, they're just
they're unguardable.
Unguardable. And I actually loved what Collinsworth kept pointing out during the Sunday night game. It's all Adams's footwork. He just does it all with his feet. He doesn't hand fight at all. So he never gets called for a push off or anything like that. He doesn't put himself in that situation. He's got the best feet in the league, and he just gets open, and him and Rodgers are on the same page. It's just it's remarkable. I heard Matt Burke say on the radio today that he thinks the Packers are actually playing very simple football, and it's just Rodgers and Adams, and he thinks that'll catch up to him. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? They're running motion left and right. Jones is a very good running back. Tanyan has made a huge leap this year. Alan Lazard does a lot of good work for them on the outside. I don't know if the Bears will beat them. What they'll do against the Bears is continue to put Adams in the slot, because Bears are stubborn on defense. They play sides of the field, Fuller on one side, someone in the other. They won't put him in the slot, so he puts Adams in the slot against the Bears. It's been Buster Screen or Duke Shelley, and Adams will just tear them up. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'll be rooting for the Packers because I want them to get a home field. They're my pick for the NFC. So that's week 17 is going to be awesome. They're all Sunday games, so the red zone is just going to be nuts. And of course, a lot of playoff implications coming out on the final week. How about my boy AJ Dillon showing out against Tennessee? I saw articles that he might be I don't know what Jones's contract is, but I think Dillon might be the future running back there. And it was nice to see him finally break out. Okay. Wrapping up here with what the hell is going on with 1, the Cubs, 2, baseball. I mean, I knew like free agency freezing up, money's not your average age of viewer is 59. You've got an old ass audience. We're still plugged in. We're baseball lifers, but I think baseball's got a problem, and I don't know how significant it is, because every time we say baseball's got a problem, they're fine. They figure out a way, but these guys these are all private businesses, so we don't know their books. So we know how sleazy businessman is. You've got the Cubs guy, Ricketts, dropping comments all season long. We are hemorrhaging money. It is biblically bad. We have no idea. I mean, we understand you want to cost cut when the economy is the way it is, when things are happening, when you're hemorrhaging money, but they are shipping off everybody and anybody. Part of it is because you gave out these contracts. Darvish, I know, it's about where you want to compete and how hard you want to compete, because I read a fascinating article. Jeff Passan had it on ESPN, which was just like, everyone's just trying to do Tampa Bay's way now. It's about efficiency over than maybe the Yankees way, the Dodgers way. And that's why we just saw the Dodgers win a World Series.
Yes, that was a great article that Passan wrote. Baseball has a competition problem. I've been saying it for a while now. They need to have a salary floor.
Yes.
To make teams spend money. No
like
salary
the Marlins.
Cap is great. No salary cap is great. If the teams with the most money want to go spend and buy a championship, I don't care. Let's have a salary floor so that these teams actually feel more competitive rosters.
And they're not just stealing money from their fans.
Right. At the same time, the teams at the very bottom are the Marlins and the Rays, and Marlins are on the rise. The Rays are a very well-run organization, always competitive. But at the same time, the Rays are telling their fans that they're still trying to compete next year as they trade away their best pitcher. That doesn't mean they won't compete, They'll still compete because they're a good team, but you
Right.
can't say we're trying to compete while you trade your best player at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. Cubs. Okay, let me be perfectly clear. I hate the Ricketts. I hate the owners. I've said this probably 2 years ago. Who would have thought I would come to hate the owners that brought a championship to the Cubs, who won a World Series? Well, 2, 3, 4 years later, and here we are. I hate them. They're cheap. They laid off a ton of employees. Blah 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 blah. I don't care if they had losses. They have billions of dollars. I don't care. It is embarrassing that they are operating like a small market team right now. The Cubs should never be in that position. The Yankees should never be in that position. The Dodgers and teams like that. Well, guess what? The Yankees and the Dodgers haven't been in this position for a while. The Cubs are now possibly entering their second time of doing it. Now, the first time it worked, and that was what they needed to do. But everyone has the copyright taped to that now, and everyone's been doing it, and it doesn't work as well as it used to. Now, at the same time, the Darvish trade does make sense. We know this team is not ready to compete next year. It's the same group of people they've had that aren't getting it done and have not got it done since then. So you trade Darvish while he's at an all-time high. At first, God, I love you, Darvish. Let me say that first and foremost. I'll miss him like crazy. He truly embodied like the Chicago work ethic, work attitude. He went to work every day. He got criticized a ton his first year when he was hurt. He had a misdiagnosed injury, not even his fault. Second year started off slow, and then from the second half of his second year through this shortened season last year, he's been dominant. Top 5 pitcher in the National League, no questions asked. He started striking everybody out, and his walk rate went down entirely. I love him, and I will miss him dearly. But you traded him while he's at an all-time value. Now, the next thing, everyone, LOL at this return they got. They didn't get nearly enough, blah, blah. We don't know, and we're not going to know for a few years. I personally like the thought of 4 teenagers. They're literally lottery tickets, and someone else phrased that. They're lottery tickets. You don't know what's going to happen. If one of them's a superstar player, great. If not, then, oh well. At the same time, if Yu Darvish is on the Cubs next year, they're still not competing. So you have to make this move. You clear some salary. I still don't understand why they're eating some of the salary. It better not be much, but I did see that's part of it. Now, who's next? That's the question. And here's my bottom line from this. If trading him means, so you have Bryant, Baez, and Rizzo all have 1 more year left, and then they're restricted free agents.
Contreras with 2?
2, okay? Right now, at most, it seems 2 of those guys would be Cubs long-term. Likely Baez, and then Rizzo, because Rizzo's still not as much expensive as the other guy. He's coming towards the end of a very team-friendly deal. It was like 7 years, $45 million. He needs more than that, but like he's older than the rest of those guys, so he's less. Now, if trading Darvish means you keep a third of that 4 people in that group, most likely Contreras, rather than if you wouldn't have been able to keep them, then I'm all for it because I love Contreras. I want him to be there for a while. So now if you have Contreras, Baez, Rizzo for the next few years, you have to get more pitching, develop young pitching. That is what has set them back the most. That and overvaluing their own guys. They weren't honest with themselves early enough. Theo, Jed, everybody, and that's come back to bite them. So we'll see what they do next. Bryant or Contreras are both hot names that are going to be talked about a lot. We'll see what they do next. Yes, it's bad that the Cubs are in this point, but it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and you brought it up. I like Zach Davies, by the way, who you got back. I know it's only for 1 year, but he's a solid pitcher. And it's passing me the point in his article that the NL Central is weak as hell. The Cardinals aren't going to – I don't even know what we're doing this year. Like, are we going to give these legacy contracts to Molina and Waino? I mean, we do that all the time, so – we're not going to get anyone special. We're just going to be middle of the muck as usual. But you brought up the point with the salary floor, because as it is right now, these small market teams, and you brought up the Cubs, a top market team, right? One of the top markets in the country, regardless of sport. They're acting like a rebuilding team, which is never supposed to happen, right? They're supposed to sign the free agents. They're supposed to always do that. And you said it, you credit that to cheapness.
Especially when they said, like, okay, so we have this whole plan. It's a 10-year plan. we're going to be horrible. We're going to get good draft picks, and we're going to get those guys, and then they're going to develop, and they're going to be good, and then we're going to win a World Series, which we did. But then after we win a World Series, and when all these guys are entering their prime and are going to need to be paid, we're going to have a new TV network, and then the cash is just going to roll in, and then we're going to build a hotel right next to the stadium. We're going to put billions of dollars into the renovation of the stadium, and it's going to yield billions and billions of dollars. Around that time when we have to pay everyone, that's when the money's just going to be coming by the wheelbarrow. Now, obviously the pandemic happened and affected everybody, but in light of that, I don't think we would be having much different of an off season right now. I don't think that if we had a completely normal year last year and the money continued to pour in, I do not think the Cubs would be spending. I still think they would be making similar moves because they made poor decisions over the past few years. So that is what really sucks as a Cubs fan. You were blatantly lied to, and you didn't think we would need to enter. You didn't think we would have to redo a rebuild period, whether this is only 1 year or 2 or 3, which is what it's more looking like now. We didn't think that would have to happen for a long time, and here we are.
Yeah, and a couple things on that. Miami, the fans have dealt with this from Florida to being convinced to build a stadium. Oh, they won a World Series title. They only won 2 of them, 96, 8, something like that. And of course, it was 2003, but then they traded Miguel Cabrera. Oh, we're never going to do that again. We're never going to do that again. No, we're not going to tear it all down. New stadium. We just paid Giancarlo Stanton. No, we're going to trade him. We're going to trade Yelich. We're going to trade Osuna. And the fans, hate him. So you're like in the same boat here is, you feel betrayed. Marlins fans feel betrayed, and Rays fans. That's the model. That's the model you're being sold to go to every game is get some cheap guy in your farm system, turn him into Blake Snell, and then trade him before you have to pay him like Garrett Cole. There's too many teams. And speaking of selling you a dream, Tampa Bay, yeah, we're going to compete this year. And then next year, we're going to be wearing Las Vegas on the top of our hats. Like it's all a game to where it was like with Montreal, how they eventually moved or how they eventually dissolved that franchise. Yeah, moved to Washington, right, with the Nationals. Okay, so that'll wrap up baseball and wrap up an extensive Corbet's Corner. New Year's Eve tomorrow. Corbet's will be with you all weekend. Huge sports weekend as always, and then we'll be back next week to recap the end of the NFL season. All right, take care, folks.